We go. I think we're live. Catherine, how are you doing today?
I am doing very well. Gail, how are you?
I'm happy. It looks like we're wearing our Carolina blue colors, even
We
though
are.
the
I'm just
football game
showing
was
empathy
miserable.
toward, towards
We're,
Carolina.
we're
Go
not going to
Pack.
talk sports today, everybody. We're going to talk about fundraising.
We are.
And
We'll switch to our most favorite topic.
that's right. Sports is not a happy topic in Chapel Hill these days, if you pay any attention
No.
to sports. But I'm still a loyal Tar Heel, I have to say. I have to say. So, Catherine, what are we talking about today?
So we're going to talk about top skills for a major gift officer. This is really, really important. When you say, Gail?
Yes, because we're fresh off building fresh new content for our Major Gift
Mhm.
Officer Boot Camp.
Mhm.
And one of the earliest topics we're going to be tackling are the skills that you need to be successful. And you know what I think, Catherine? I think that people don't think deeply about some of the skills that we're going to be talking about today. People don't recognize that there's skills that they need.
I would agree, Gail. And you know what you just said about how we're developing content, but and let me translate that a little bit for everyone who might be listening.
Yeah.
Gail and I like think about this stuff quite a bit. Not only what, like, for example, what are great skills for a major gift officer, but how do we convey to our clients, and our consulting team works on this as well. How do we convey what we know, what we've experienced, our wisdom, so to speak? How do we convey that to a way that people understand it and can take some learning away? So
Mhm.
that makes us, I'll say this, drum roll, continual learners. And you
Oh,
know what,
yeah.
Gail? I bet that's one of those top skills, what we're talking about with major gift officers, is
Mhm.
always be learning on how to become even better at what it is you do.
You know, I am naturally curious about a lot of stuff. And so when I'm exploring something I'm curious about, it doesn't feel like work. It
Right.
doesn't feel like effort because I want to learn it. And so I hope that curiosity will be a skill. But I want to talk, Catherine, we're going to have a conversation today about what it really takes to succeed as a major gift officer today. And I'm not really talking about getting meetings with the donor or the right kind of stewardship for a gift, which are important, but I'm talking about the kind of fundraiser that can consistently bring in transformational gifts and the kind of fundraiser that can inspire donors to go big. So that's sort of what we want to drive into today is these skills that separate. How about this, Catherine? Average major gift officers from the ones who are knocking it out of the park.
Yes, that's a great way to frame it. So, what we're really talking about too is sort of what it is you bring to the table. So, going back to what Gail said earlier, yes, getting appointments, all those things, very important. I had a dime for every time somebody asked me, how do I get appointments with a donor?
Be
Be
well
somewhere on
paid.
an island somewhere. Um, but but seriously, this what you bring to the table. This is a time to be a little introspective. When you say, Gail, about kind of like assessing what it is that you're bringing to the table, and and those things that you can actually do something about. So I would say that. So I think one of these things really is some of the skills that are really important. Now we hear this a lot in consulting. We'll hear, I'll say to people, so how are you preparing for this meeting? This is a trick question I ask, so clients are listening, they'll understand how to answer this next time I ask this question. And so, how are you preparing for a meeting? And people say, I am like, I'm going to get this brochure and I'm working on a deck here for that. I'm thinking about what I'm going to tell the donor and all these things. And, that's not really the way to prepare for a meeting. So here's where this thing about what I'm talking about, this skill, you're going into a meeting, and one of the top skills that we'll talk about, and Gail will talk about our little course in a minute, um, is that you're a facilitator. And what
Mhm.
does being a really great facilitator take? It takes really deep listening skills.
You know, one of the things that I've always said in all my workshops is that if you're talking more than 50% of the time, you're dead. You're dead. I was thinking about that this morning about,
Mhm.
Catherine, I might have told you this story. I went to Nordstrom to buy some new eyebrow pencil, and the lady, she was such an expert, and she talked and talked and talked and talked and talked about
Yeah.
herself. And I thought, I don't want to have anything to do with you. Are you interested in me or not? And you know, it's so equivalent to a donor meeting because you prepare your materials and your deck and your
Mhm. Mhm.
presentation. instead of really practicing the listening skills and
Mhm.
being prepared to listen.
Mhm.
Because if you can tune into a donor's passions and interests and the difference they want to make in the world, that's the key to their gift.
Absolutely. And listening isn't just hearing, it's also observing. So I like the word observing. We use that a lot in consulting, Gail. We observe, we're always observing. And
Mm.
so observing is really important. So what are you sensing, that kind of innate ability to be able to kind of, this is also what empathy means. So being able to kind of try to feel what someone else is feeling in the moment. It also requires it, that facilitation, that deeper listening also means that you're asking the right questions of the donor so that try to elicit the information or engage the donor in a way. And so this is what true engagement means. It means you're in a conversation of give and take. So you're asking the right questions and you are listening, not sitting there thinking about what you're going to say next, but actually hearing and listening deeply, observing what is going on when the donor is talking to you. This is really key to being super, super successful.
And you want to watch the donor's body language, and you want to be able to ask things like, I'd love to know more about your philanthropy, or I'd love to know more about your interest in our organization, or what's your experience been like as a donor to us, or what are you most interested in? What would you like to learn more about? I mean, I wish I had known when I was a beginning frontline
Mhm.
fundraiser how to ask a donor these questions, because the content of my meetings with donors would have been so different, because I would have been focused on the donor and like I said earlier, the impact they want to make in the world. I mean, people are making gifts to make a difference. They have an idea of the difference they want to make, don't they, Catherine?
They do. And I said, I'll never forget, Gail, when I said this the first time years and years ago when I started working with you, that, donors are donors because they want to give away their money. I mean, that's a simple statement, but it's actually in some ways profound because somehow we think we're supposed to be convincing them to give away their money. Like you've got to go beg them for their money. But
Uh,
that's not the case. And that kind of leads, Gail, to the second point that we were talking about earlier, this kind of high net worth mindset or major gift mindset, really being, focused on that type of giving. It's different than annual giving. It's unique to for a couple of reasons. One reason is that the donor has significant control in that arena. They know when they want to give their money away, what timing is good for them. There are lots of variables that impact the donor's decision making.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
so it's a different level of decision making than just, yes, I'm going to give, and no, I'm not going to give, or I'm going to write this check or write that check. So a high net worth mindset means you understand something. You don't have to be an expert or, a finance person or anything like that, but at least something about wealth, how people hold it, just a little bit about how major donors really give away their money. What are some of the variables that influence their decision making? Again, is your donor is going through in the major gift world a little more complex decision making process with more variables engaged. So that's sort of, I think, Gail, what we're talking about in a high net worth mindset is
Mm-hmm.
understanding something about those variables of decision making that's occurring. And that's why the facilitator mindset
That's
is so
right.
critical, because that's what you're doing in reality, is facilitating that donor's decision making.
And that's when you come across as a philanthropic advisor. A lot of people are changing their titles. They're no longer a major gift officer. They're a philanthropic advisor or philanthropic consultant or something. And it
Mhm.
means that you can focus on the donor instead of on your own agenda or your own presentation. And if you take that attitude and that approach in meeting with a high net worth donor, you don't worry so much about your difference in status. You don't
Exactly.
come across as a supplicant.
Hmm.
No, you're not in any way betting. You're exploring as a professional,
Hmm.
not as a social friend, but as a professional. How can I support you? And I understand you're interested in our organization, and I'm interested, and you're already investing in it.
Hmm.
So your job is to figure out how to inspire the donor to invest more, right?
Exactly. And so you're really kind of, in some ways, you're kind of making sure you're pushing that door, gently pushing that door open more and more. But
Mhm.
again, those decision variables are really important. You go back to who's influencing the donor. Do you have all the right people in the room? Is the spouse, significantly important? Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not.
That's right.
Significantly important to decision making. Is the children, are they part a variable in all of this? How about the donor's financial advisor? There's nothing wrong with asking a few of these gently permission-based questions to get to who else needs to be in the room, sort of, or at least be considered. Because there have been many times in my career when I was a practitioner I was always a major gift person, that I was called upon to speak to a CPA, a financial advisor, an attorney,
Hmm.
and, I didn't have to be a lawyer. I didn't have to be a CPA. I didn't have to be those people. I needed to know how to go into those conversations professionally, as Gail was talking about and so eloquently said a minute ago, professionally be in those, answer the questions that they needed, provide them with the information, and be aware of what is transpiring in the environment around that decision that would facilitate that decision outcome being favorable to your organization.
And I want to reframe this. It's a high net worth donor mindset, but it's also a major and principal gift
Mhm,
mindset so that you are know that you're dealing with high net worth individuals
mhm,
and you are have taken the time to understand wealth. I mean, I read the Wall Street Journal every day when I worked at the business school,
mhm,
and I was able to ask smart questions. That's all I knew was how to ask the
mhm,
questions about
mhm,
all that finance stuff. When you're prepared to play that
mhm,
role, you are more confident and you're more at ease, and that
mhm,
is key if you're dealing. If you have to have an opportunity to have lunch with a billionaire, it's a scary experience. And one
mhm.
of our consultants talks about he's glad he knows which fork to use because,
Sure.
sometimes knowing some of those social aspects of a meal, ooh, that's scary. A meal with a billionaire, you might be a little bit more on edge or more self-conscious of your
Yeah.
north, back and
Well,
forth and
I'll
that, I don't know.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this story. There's nothing wrong with this. I will say this is kind of funny, but talking about the billionaire sitting in their apartment on Central Park South, and with the president of the institution. Gail was aware of this because she was my consultant at this
I was
time.
setting it up,
Yeah,
everybody.
she was helping she was the coach in the background, the voice in the ear, so to speak. But I did buy myself a new dress, so there's
That was
nothing
good.
wrong with that.
That builds confidence.
It does. So really, it looked great. So anyway, there's, the other piece is a little advice: never take yourself too seriously
Yeah.
in these situations, but to, be able to be comfortable in that environment because you know why you're there. Your role. This is, I think, we talk about the major gift officer and the roles to raise money. Well, yes, it is, but I'm talking about your role with the donor. So
Hmm.
your role with the donor, which is what we're talking about, this whole mindset piece, and
Hmm.
what differentiates the just good major gift officer to the great major gift officer
Hmm.
is understanding your role, or sometimes they used to refer to it as your
Hmm.
place in the whole scheme of things with the donor. What is your place? And I think really thinking about that as being a facilitator is one key way to think about it. As Gail said, not the supplicant. You're not there to beg for something. Donor already knows what they're going to do, or that they're already going to be philanthropic, or they wouldn't be a donor. You would be sitting there to begin with. um and, because you don't convince somebody to be a donor. That's a decision they make way before you ever show up on the scene. So you are there to facilitate that gift. So really listening, like I was really listening in that call that are from years ago. It's not one of many like that, where I was listening to the donor and watching them as the president of the school talked about the purpose and impact of the investment and what we were seeking for them to support.
Hmm.
Presidents can describe things. Gift officers facilitate, so it's different roles. But we had gone through all of that before that call, so we were really prepared and well prepared. But when it came time to say, um, when the donor finally said, "How much is this going to take? The investment?" they said, how much is it going to take, Catherine? Because they knew they knew they'd been around the track enough as giving they were on the top philanthropy list.
Yeah, like the
Run for
Forbes 400,
philanthropy.
everybody,
The
or the
big one.
Forbes 100. And
Mm,
you think about that, Catherine, when you do have your high net worth donor principal gift mindset on, I think it elevates you to operate at a different level. And I
mhm.
think it gives you a certain kind of energy, and the donor can sense that.
Yes.
And you're not this young thing who doesn't know what they're doing. Instead,
Mhm,
the donor can sense how you're being,
mhm.
and how you are being is so essential. And those are kind of the intangible
Yes.
skills that bring confidence, and the listening, and just the ability to meet somebody of wealth on a professional level. So let's talk about the third skill. And the third
Mhm,
skill is one Catherine and I have fun brainstorming about this, is patience.
mhm, mhm,
And the thing about major gifts is that they take time. And
mhm,
I started, you may know, of course, that I started my fundraising career at Duke.
mhm,
It was a really interesting motto they had, that the more times you are in front of a major donor before the ask, the
mhm.
bigger the gift.
Yes. Mhm,
And so I think we teach that a lot to boards and our
mhm,
clients, that repeated contact,
mhm.
and also my mentor at Duke said to me, Gail, he said, major gift fundraising is like spinning plates on a stick. You can't spin but too many plates. You remember, I've
Right.
told this story before. And
Mhm,
so you nudge this one, and then you nudge this one, and you only
mhm,
have that 10, because he was the VP. He was dealing with
mhm,
very, 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 very large donors.
mhm, mhm,
And then he said, when a donor's ready to make a gift, you're in charge, and you gently remove the stick. And he said, harvest the plate.
mhm,
I
mhm.
use the word harvest.
Yeah.
But the thing is that you have to know, is this consistent nurturing?
Mhm,
The best major gift officers do not rush,
mhm.
and they do not rush the donor. You may have a
Yeah.
goal, you may have a timetable, but if the donor feels rushed, what happens, Catherine?
They either give you a throwaway gift or they stop answering your calls, one of the two. But and because I go back, Gail, what you're talking about too is the donor's timing. The donor's timing is a donor's timing. I mean, you really rarely can you change that. Sometimes there's some tactical things you could do, but what you are always wanting to find out is a donor's timing, and they'll tell you if you ask them.
They
If you
certainly
ask
will.
them when would be a good time for us to discuss your support of this, and they'll tell
Mhm.
you what that is, and they'll tell you what you need. And long time ago when I got started into consulting, and I'm thinking about, well, how do I take all this experience I had as a practitioner and turn it into something that might be useful for someone else?
Mhm.
I had to think through all the times that I was in front of a donor to talk about a gift, which was,
Mhm.
I've lost track of that, how many times, but it wasn't always just one conversation. We've gotten to the big thing about the ask,
Right. Everybody focuses on the ask. When are they
Yeah.
ready, when they're at it? But if you think about this major and principal gift fundraising as long-term cultivation and strategic moves,
Hmm.
that are going to require patience. And what do you think about persistence? And, in order to have patience, you need a clear plan on
Hmm.
how to guide the donor from the first interest to that transformational commitment. So you're exploring that plan as you get to know the donor better. You're finding out more pieces of your plan. It's like a
Right.
jigsaw puzzle of what they need. Maybe they need to bring in their family. Maybe they need to meet the dean or the head of school, or the head of the hospital, or whatever
Mhm.
official that they are impressed with and would
Right.
like to meet.
But the other thing, Gail, to go back to what we were saying about the skills, all the things that Gail was just talking about, like developing the relationship strategy. Some people call it cultivation strategy. I like relationship strategy better personally, but you won't get there. You won't be able to do that if you aren't deeply listening to the donor, if you aren't taking a position as a facilitator versus a supplicant and just trying to figure out when to ask them for something. And the other piece of that is that you want it without that mindset that we were talking about, kind of the high net worth or major gift, principal gift, whatever big gift mindset that you need to have, that helps you understand that there are lots of decision variables that go on that around the donor making a major gift. And it isn't just about loving your organization. So that's part
Right.
of it, not all of it. So you
Mhm.
need to understand all those things. So these skills that we are talking about come into play, or you will not be able to do what Gail was just talking about, really create an effective strategy for your donor that's going to advance the relationship in a way and a method that leads you to understanding their timing and something more about their capacity, that what they might be willing to consider for your organization, those key and what they value most importantly, those key things that you need to know in order to be able to put an opportunity, in front of your donor to
That's
see if
right.
that is something they wish to further explore. And then being able to talk to the people that they may need you to talk to. Like I said before, I have talked to attorneys, CPAs, finance people, all these people who are somewhere behind the scenes, and sometimes you may never see them, but every once in a while they pop up. And you need to be prepared.
You really do. And if you are able to take that role and have the patience, then you can stay focused
Mhm.
and you can map out thoughtful engagement of the donor, and you're not rushing because you have a plan.
Mhm.
And I think, what about this, Catherine? You can, if you're adopting the patient's mindset with a plan, so you have a sense of what the steps are, you can keep your leadership looped in. But
Absolutely.
the donor feels valued at
Mhm.
every
Mhm.
step. And I think that that's what it really takes to bring in
Yeah.
the large, large, large principal gifts. It's a process and not a
Mhm.
pitch. Shall we make that our
Right.
motto? It's a process and not a
It
pitch.
is a process, and it is a very important and critical process to engage in. And so that patience, I also think that patience also contributes, they're all interrelated, what we've talked about. You just don't have one aspect, and they don't have anything to do with each other. That patience comes from also a sense of confidence,
Hmm.
and also a little bit of willingness, of a little vulnerability in there, because you do have to put yourself out there a little bit, in terms of being able to be a facilitator and saying, trust me, you're going to make mistakes, because I certainly did.
Yes,
That's
you have to.
another one LinkedIn line.
Another skill is self-nurturing when you make a mistake. Self.
Yeah, yeah. I have somebody to call, but so so that whole patience and mindset and confidence, deep breaths are really important. Don't worry, you don't have to fill the silence in the room with just blather. It's okay for have a moment of quiet in a conversation. It's much
Ooh,
shorter than you think it
oh,
is.
oh, yes.
Mhm.
Be comfortable with silence and
Mhm.
and don't blather. If you
Yeah,
can help it, don't blather.
yeah.
So everybody, if you want to stand out as a major and principal gifts officer today, remember these three things to focus on. Build authentic, trust-based relationships through listening.
Mhm.
And step into the high net worth mindset,
Mhm.
and then play the long game
Mhm.
to secure the principal gifts that you're really, really seeking. And so if you do this, you won't just be raising money, everybody. You're going to be raising transformational gifts that can change the future of your organization. And so that is what we want for everybody listening,
Yeah.
to raise the transformational gifts.
We certainly do. I mean, that is the most exciting thing ever, is to raise those large gifts.
And so I just wanted, we are finishing up our LinkedIn Lives for the month. And this is the last one. And the reason we were doing this is because we were announcing and promoting our brand new Major Gift Officer Boot Camp,
Mhm.
and which starts next week. We have two final places left. So we would love to work with you if you want to learn all the skills you need, and not only skills, but the analytics, the
Mhm.
steps, the process, how to ask, how to close from
Mhm.
our brilliant team and very smart consultants. So hope you'll consider joining. Catherine, great to talk to you today.
Always good to talk to you, Gail, about our favorite topics,
Yes,
raising
thank you
money.
so much. Yes, raise money and let's change the world.
Absolutely.